right, let's dive into what is, I think, one of the most powerful farewell speeches ever. We're talking about the ancient leader Joshua. He's at the end of his life, and he gets one last shot to talk to his people. This one speech, it's going to define his entire legacy and set the course for their future. So, what on earth does he say? Let's get into it.
Seriously, put yourself in his shoes for a second. What would you say? If you had to boil down your entire life's work, everything you believe in, into one last speech, what's the one thing you'd want people to remember? That's the kind of pressure Joshua is facing right here.
So, what's his opening move? You might think it'd be a victory lap. You know, a celebration of all he's accomplished. But no. He starts with a warning. A really stark, urgent warning to the leaders he's gathered around him.
Okay, to really get why this is so urgent, we have to look at the big picture. Right now, things are good. The nation of Israel is finally at peace, they've got rest from their enemies, the land is stable. But for Joshua, who's now 110 years old, he sees a huge danger in all this comfort. He knows that peace can make people lazy and forgetful, and he is not going to let that happen on his watch.
And believe me, he does not pull any punches. He basically tells them, look, if you start compromising your beliefs, if you start mixing with the nations around you, don't think for a second they'll be your friends. Instead, he says, they'll become thorns in your eyes. I mean, what a brutal image, right? Just this idea of constant nagging pain.
Now, for a society of farmers, this metaphor would have hit hard. Thorns weren't just a little annoying. They were a real threat to your survival, right? They'd choke your crops, make your land totally useless. And that's exactly the point Joshua is making. He's saying that compromising on what you believe in will do the exact same thing to your nation and your spirit. It'll choke the life right out of you.
So, to make sure this warning really lands, Joshua does something smart. He knows he can't just scare them about the future. He has to anchor them in their past. So he forces them to stop, look back, and remember the whole journey that brought them to this very spot.
He gives them this whirlwind tour of their own history. He's like, remember your ancestors who worshipped other gods? Remember being slaves in Egypt? Remember the Red Sea parting and wandering for 40 years? He lays it all out, the whole long, crazy story of victories that brought them into this land. And the point he's hammering home is this: you didn't do this on your own. None of this was because of your own strength. And right in the middle of this history lesson, Joshua drops this really fascinating little detail. He says that God sent hornets ahead of the army to drive out two of their biggest enemies, which raises a question, right? What in the world is he talking about? Hornets?
Well, there are basically two big theories here. The first is that he means it literally, like actual giant swarms of hornets causing total panic. But there's another idea, a more metaphorical one, that the hornets were actually the Egyptian army. See, the hornet was a symbol for the pharaoh, and we know from history that Egypt had been campaigning in that area, weakening the local kingdoms right before Israel showed up. Either way you slice it, Joshua's point is the same. God was clearing the path.
Okay, so all this looking back at their history, it's all building up to this one dramatic moment. This is the climax of the whole speech. Now that he's reminded them where they came from, he lays out a choice for their future, and it's totally black and white. There's no gray area. He basically puts two options on the table, and that's it. Option A, fear the Lord and serve Him, for real, with everything you've got. Option B, go back to the gods your ancestors worshipped way back when. Or, hey, pick up the gods of the people whose land you're living in now. He's essentially saying, look, if you don't want to serve the Lord, fine, but you have to choose. He's forcing their hand. And then, before anyone can even say a word, he makes it personal. This isn't a general giving orders anymore. This is a man making a personal declaration of faith. He draws a line in the sand and says, I don't know what you're all going to do, but as for me and my family, we're serving the Lord. Wow, it's just an incredible example of leadership, maybe one of the most famous statements of personal conviction ever.
So of course the people are all fired up. They immediately shout back, yes, we'll serve the Lord. But Joshua, he's a wise old man. He knows how easy it is to make promises in an emotional moment. So he actually pushes back on them. He warns them, hang on, this isn't some easy thing you're promising. You can't just make a rash vow. This is serious business.
And this brings us to the final act of the story. Joshua knows that words can fade. So to make sure this promise sticks, he takes some very real, very physical steps to seal the deal, and really, to mark the end of an entire era.
So first, the people make the vow again, formally this time. Then Joshua does something amazing. He takes a giant stone and sets it up under a tree. And he tells them,
This stone heard every word you said. It will be a witness against you if you break this promise. And then, for the final piece, they do something incredibly symbolic. They finally bury the bones of Joseph, bones they had carried all the way from Egypt through all those years in the desert. A promise made hundreds of years earlier is finally fulfilled.
And with that, his work is finished. Joshua dies at the age of 110. And not long after, the priest Eleazar dies too. Just like that, the entire generation that had seen it all, the miracles in Egypt, the conquest of the land, they're all gone.
And this right here is the critical detail that changes everything. See, when Moses died, Joshua was clearly appointed as the next leader. But when Joshua dies, there's no one. No successor is named. No one is put in charge. Suddenly there is this massive leadership vacuum at the very top.
We're told that for as long as that generation was alive, the people kept their promise. They served the Lord. They remembered the journey. But Joshua's final haunting words are still hanging in the air. What happens now? What happens to a promise when all the people who lived the story are gone? When there's no one left in charge to remind you of who you are and where you came from?